The Nintendo Switch has a reputation for hosting some of the best platformers, JRPGs, and simulation games of recent years, but the console isn't known for its vast library of first-person shooters, largely because the platform's technical limitations mean that prevent some of the latest FPS games from running. However, that doesn't mean you don't have a wide variety of shooters to choose from. That's why in today's video I bring you the best FPS games on the Nintendo Switch. It took a long while to happen, but in October 2023, Borderlands 3 arrived on the Switch in the form of the Ultimate Edition. This package contains the base game and all of its DLC, offering a lot of content considering a single playthrough can last 30 hours without spending too much time on side quests or any of the expansions. Borderlands 3 is also designed to be replayed thanks to its diverse roster of Vault Hunters, each of whom has their own skill trees that allow for wildly diverse builds. All of the above would mean nothing if the game ran poorly on the Nintendo Switch, which was a pre-launch fear since Gearbox did not reveal too much about the port. While obviously coming with more concessions than any of the other versions, Borderlands 3 performs pretty well on the Switch, at least to the point of not hampering the overall experience. Overwatch 2 is a lot of things, but a proper sequel to the original, now unavailable, Overwatch is not one of them. Although a few new maps and heroes are welcome, and the gameplay itself remains just as enjoyably intense as it always was, there is nothing here that feels innovative or notable enough to justify that 2 in the title. Overwatch 2 feels more like a few updates Blizzard could have pushed to the original release. Couple this with a heightened focus on monetization and the absence at launch of the promised co-op story content, and you're left with an experience that feels like it falls short of the potential it had. As a live service free-to-play game, perhaps time will eventually see this new release grow in fresh and unexpected ways to eventually prove itself a worthy sequel. At any rate, it costs you nothing but time to try, and it is just about as fun in a match as it always has been. Also taking place in the 2030s is this riveting futuristic FPS game called Bright Memory: Infinite. It's a hybrid sequel and remake expansion of Bright Memory, Episode 1. Aside from the stunning graphics and gameplay visuals, Bright Memory also features melee action, where you can parry bullets and juggle enemies with a secondary sword weapon. You're an agent of the supernatural science research organization named Shalia Tan, required in the field after a strange global weather event. The investigation puts you in battle with some enemy soldier units and ancient giant bosses amid a scenic landscape, and you have an exosuit that grants you extra superpowered abilities. This recommendation comes with the caveat that gunplay is not the main focus, to the point of being actively discouraged in most situations. Nevertheless, Dying Light is a fantastic Switch port that can satisfy a few different consumer needs. Craving an open-world experience? Techland's release delivers an impressive map that emphasizes verticality. Want a challenging horror campaign? Unlike its sequel, the original Dying Light fits the genre well, delivering a good mix of action and survival horror elements. Yearning for intense action? The game features brutal combat that prioritizes close-quarters encounters against relatively large hordes of zombies, along with ranged options that can be relied upon in desperate situations. Now, while guns are not in short supply, Dying Light revolves primarily around melee since firing off a shotgun is likely to attract the attention of zombies, meaning players will want to avoid using these types of weapons as much as possible. That said, the gunplay feels pretty good, and it complements the rest of the gameplay loop. The game also has great parkour, arguably among the best of all time. The Metro games are based on the novels by Dmitry Glukhovsky. Although the Nintendo Switch still doesn't have Metro Exodus, the Redux double feature of Metro 2033 and Last Light are just as terrific. These games tell a post-apocalyptic science fiction tale of an alien species called the Dark Ones taking over Moscow following the devastation of a nuclear war. Throughout the series, you play Artyom, who narrates the events chronicling his missions against the mutated creatures roaming the wasteland and the enemy factions of soldiers you come across. You have some interesting weapons to upgrade and plenty of intense moments as you navigate the metro tunnels beneath Moscow. While its graphical downgrade on Switch is hard to miss, that doesn't detract from the fact that Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus, is the best narrative single-player FPS experience you can have on Switch right now. The lack of a multiplayer mode might grate, although that wasn't present on other consoles either, but with its brilliantly written story and intense action, this stands alongside Doom as a blistering FPS campaign that feels close to magical when played on Switch hardware. BJ's War Against the Third Reich is one you definitely won't want to miss. ID Software followed up Doom with another genre-defining project in Quake, and the game's brilliance has not faded at all over the last 25 years. The Switch Remaster is a great package that comes with the original game's DLC, a new expansion, and other bonus content. However, at its heart, this is still the same game that dropped in 1996. In this case, that is a positive since Quake's gunplay, level design, and atmosphere are timeless, despite the fact they scream 1990s. Although nostalgia can sweeten the experience, Quake Remastered holds up beautifully even when someone does not have a pre-installed love for the property. The multiplayer is fantastic, and the same can be said for Quake's single-player campaign. The latter is enough to justify picking up this Switch FPS. As a free-to-play game, Paladins, Champions of the Realm is an easy sell. As exciting, tense and rewarding as Overwatch, it brings the cross-platform hero shooter to a new platform without sacrificing the Moorish gameplay tenets that's made it such a hit with both casual and pro gamers. There's a definitive learning curve for those looking to play competitively, but it's nonetheless one of the console's best multiplayer shooters. The Hellwalker, the myth, the legend, Doom 2016, and Doom Eternal will send the Doomslayer to coat your Switch screens in copious amounts of demonic blood in his persisting fight against Hell's legions. These are two excellent choices for an FPS due to their thrilling enemy and level design, immersive story and gunplay, and impeccably written dialogue. The sequel expands on everything the 2016 game brings and gets even better with the level layouts, enemies, and challenging boss battles. You have the same system of upgrading weapons to fire varying ammo and an AI guiding you through the missions, but now you also have more parkour elements introduced. A couple of small visual and audio issues aside, Immortal Redneck is an absolute blast. By combining well-crafted room design with randomly generated maps and then giving the player the ability to smoothly run, leap and blast through them with all the grace of a shotgun-wielding swan while constantly upgrading their abilities, it offers a massively satisfying, foul-mouthed experience that's likely to remain permanently installed on your Switch long after you've deleted other games to make space. In 2023, retro shooters are no longer remotely special. Each month seems to produce one or two throwbacks to the 90s, particularly on PC, and they do have a habit of blurring into each other. Nevertheless, fans of classic run-and-gun first-person shooters will likely find something to enjoy in most of these releases, and a few of the best boomer shooters are available on the Switch. Warhammer 40,000, Bolt Gun is one of the better examples of this modern subgenre, although it should only be a Switch user's first purchase if they happen to be big fans of the source material since there are slightly better options on the store. Cast as an ultramarine, players crash land on a planet filled with tech priests, which naturally must be eradicated. While not devoid of a story, Bolt Gun largely pushes it to the side to focus on gameplay. That said, Warhammer 40,000 fans should get a kick out of the game's references. The gunplay is aggressive, impactful, and satisfying, as any retro shooter should be. Bolt Gun's weapon selection is solid, with each gun having its uses and strengths. Much like the port of the first game, Doom 2 on Switch delivers a solid rendition of a classic FPS with the audio and visual issues present when the game launched eliminated in a patch and elevating this to the status of must-buy. This sequel holds up just as well the original does, and its price is similarly reasonable. As a result, we naturally recommend this one just as much as its predecessor. This also includes the official user-created pack of master levels. Developed by People Can Fly, a Polish studio responsible for titles like Outriders, the Painkiller series, and Gears of War, Judgment, Bulletstorm was initially released in 2011 and generated a fair bit of praise for its humor and an arcade-like approach to the combat, which places an emphasis on creative, spectacular takedowns via its skill shot system. Players who like action-packed shooters who don't limit the ways in which they can approach each encounter will feel right at home with Bulletstorm. The Switch version of the game also comes with a Duke Nukem skin which replaces Grayson, the default protagonist, allowing players to play out the campaign as the iconic character. An occasionally stuttering frame rate isn't enough to derail one of the most memorable FPS campaigns of yesteryear. Doom 3 still has the power to unnerve, and while elements of it may be showing their age now, the overall package, complete with the BFG edition improvements and expansion packs, still guarantees value for money. This entry in the series might be different from the others, but it's well worth rediscovering on Switch. Looks cracking on Switch OLED, too. Originally released in 2013, Call of Juarez, Gunslinger is a Western-themed shooter framed around a bounty hunter's stories as he recounts his missions to take down some of history's most infamous outlaws. Despite being roughly a decade old, Techland's game has aged rather well thanks to its stylized visuals and simple but effective gameplay. Although not featuring an especially huge arsenal of weapons, Gunslinger's chosen guns generally feel good to use, particularly the sawed-off shotgun and quick shooter. The gunplay has an arcade feel to it, with the campaign guiding players down a fixed path akin to a shooting gallery. While this gets repetitive on occasion, Gunslinger makes up for it by maintaining a very quick pace. Quite a few of the chapters also end with Mexican standoffs, some of which are genuinely intense. Metro: Last Light Redux is another strong entry in the Metro franchise that adds plenty of big-budget bombast to Artyom's adventures, but truly excels when it decides to stick to the more slow-moving, methodical stealth action of its predecessor. It may not quite hit the highs of Metro 2033 and is dragged down in places by some ill-advised boss battles and a few too many hands-off, on-rails moments, but overall, this is an excellent first-person survival title, presented in a fantastic port that's an absolute must-play for FPS and horror fans. The Wolfenstein series is one of the most important franchises in video game history. 1991's Wolfenstein 3D is widely recognized as the first-ever modern first-person shooter. For years, the series was overshadowed by ID Software's other titles, like Doom or Quake, but the recent Wolfenstein games have enjoyed a fair share of popularity as well-polished, story-focused shooters. Despite being a sequel to Wolfenstein, The New Order, playing the first game, which is unfortunately unavailable on the Switch, isn't really necessary for players to get a grip on what's going on in the plotline, which follows BJ Blazkowicz as he links up with various freedom fighters to start a revolution with the goal of toppling the Nazi regime once and for all. In terms of gameplay, it's pretty much what one would expect from a Wolfenstein title, wrapped up in stunning graphics that push the Switch's hardware to its very limits. Journey to the Savage Planet is a wonderfully unique mixture of No Man's Sky-style exploration, first-person shooting, and Metroidvania-esque platforming with a wonderfully dark sense of humor that arrives on Switch in a slightly compromised but still eminently playable state. ARY-26 is a fantastically vibrant planet to explore, filled with cute creatures, bizarre flora and fauna, and super-slick platforming and environmental puzzle design. The monolithic tower that sits at the middle of this alien planet is a compelling mystery to work towards, and the game doles out plenty of fun new tools and toys at just the right rate to keep you highly entertained as you jump, grapple, boost, and blast your way to the secret at its core. There have been obvious graphical concessions made and the frame rate does wobble from time to time. Performance definitely feels worse in dock than handheld, but overall Typhoon Games has created an adventure that's strong enough to transcend any of these slight technical shortcomings and absolutely remains an experience you should check out if you get the chance. Containing all the BioShock games and expansions, this collection offers great value for money, especially for newcomers who never experienced this trilogy. 2007's BioShock is rightfully regarded as one of the best games of the 2000s, garnering widespread praise for its brilliant world building, complex philosophical themes, and setting. Even all these years later, Rapture still impresses, both in its environmental storytelling and sheer atmosphere. Combat-wise, BioShock is nothing too amazing, but it does not detract from the experience either. Its sequels, BioShock 2 and Infinite, are more polarizing, but their positives outweigh their negatives. Infinite's story is probably its strongest component, especially its handling of Elizabeth as a supporting character. As a setting, Columbia is a nice change from Rapture, especially since the latter was reused in BioShock 2. Although generally overshadowed by its predecessor and successor, BioShock 2 arguably has the strongest gunplay in the trilogy. A masterpiece to this day, Duke Nukem 3D is done proud by this Switch conversion. It looks and runs brilliantly, the online options are a welcome inclusion, and it's not compromised in any way from its earlier console release. It's a shame that a handful of previously available expansion packs are missing, but given the low price of World Tour Edition, it feels churlish to complain. In the words of the Duke himself, come get some. Borderlands Legendary Collection is an excellent Switch showing for this beloved series, though it's difficult to determine if the price is right. Sure, there's an enormous amount of content here, so you're certainly not being ripped off, but it's old content and these games are routinely extremely cheap on other services. Still, it's a technically excellent port of three expansive, enjoyable shooters, and they're a perfect fit for the Switch. Whether played alone or with pals, the gameplay is terrific to dip into for 20 minutes or get stuck into for a massive grinding session. If you somehow never played Borderlands before, you can't go wrong with this set. And if you have, but want to try a different character class on the bus ride home, now's your chance. Proteus is oddly relaxing. Just to be clear, the retro-style shooter barely gives the player a moment's rest as they rampage through missions filled with pixelated enemies who are not pushovers. However, the game's structure, level design, and short but still substantial missions lend themselves well to quick play sessions driven by a player's desire to unwind while blasting monsters in the face. Even though it has a minimalist story that builds quite well throughout the campaign, Proteus has a pick-up and play quality that makes it an easy recommendation. One of the game's more controversial design choices is its progression system, which requires players to unlock moves like a dash, and the process will take a few hours. On the one hand, this decision ensures the gameplay is periodically revitalized with a game-changing mechanic. Conversely, it does force players to repeat levels since certain collectibles can only be reached once these abilities are unlocked. With Metroid Prime Remastered, the seemingly impossible has been achieved. A masterpiece has been made even better. The minor issues we have with the motion controls and the occasional visual hiccup pale in comparison to the enhancements that have been made here. The visual improvements are extensive, right through to the minor details, and it all comes together to create one of the best-looking games on Switch, remaster or not. The new twin-stick control setup works flawlessly for both veterans and newcomers, but if you're itching to go back to the original GameCube controls, that option is there too. With an expanded gallery feature to round things out, Metroid Prime Remastered feels like a new benchmark in how older games can be thoughtfully revitalized for the modern age. 26 years after its launch, ID Software's Quake 2 has received a remaster, bringing along with it some extra goodies, like improved 4K and widescreen support and an entirely new campaign expansion called Call of the Machine that offers 28 original levels developed by Machine Games. If you haven't got into Quake in the past, the time is now. And if your friends don't own a Switch and are more PC, Xbox, or PlayStation, there's crossplay available on top of regular online and local multiplayer. The sci-fi story and movement shooter gameplay mimics the early Doom and Wolfenstein games, though here, you're a lone wolf going up against a militarized alien race called the Strogg. If someone has another console or a PC, they should use those systems to play Apex Legends. While the Switch version is far worse than the rest is a statement that holds for many multi-platform shooters, it is not that big of a deal in single-player packages. Respawn's Battle Royale is all about competitive action, and it even supports crossplay between platforms, which Switch users should disable to create a level playing field. Unfortunately, it might be difficult to get a game with crossplay disabled. Still, if Switch is a player's only option, Apex Legends could offer an okay way to spend a few hours, and its free-to-play status removes any real risk beyond consuming memory space. Nobody should ever get a Switch specifically to play this FPS game. An Xbox Series S is a better budget option, but it is also a fine addition to most libraries. So, did you like the games I recommended? So leave your like, subscribe to the channel to follow me, and activate the bell because I post a lot of videos on this channel and you can't miss it. I would like to remind you that in the description we have a list of different products that can make your gaming experience much better. If you want to buy, the link will be in the description. Anyway, thank you very much for following me this far, and until next time, bye.